I think it's just like a game where you keep changing the goalpost. You
Yeah.
reach a certain point and then you push the goalpost further. Then
Yeah.
you reach a certain point and you push the goalpost further, but your baseline happiness stays the same.
Yeah.
You just keep pushing the goalpost,
Yeah.
and that's a losing game. Every time I got $1 for when I was called an overthinker, I would be a millionaire by now and I wouldn't have had to start passive income streams like this one.
But trust us, we're not overthinking girlies. In fact, I reckon others are perhaps just not thinking enough.
But don't worry, we've got you covered because we're here to think on your behalf on all the things that matter to you and to us with the girls who overthink.
With Girls Who Think, the podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Girls Who Think, the podcast. This is Simran.
And I'm Niharika.
And we're here with a very interesting topic, like always, but this time it's a little more research heavy and a little more educational than, more open ended. And the topic is the science of happiness. So, Niharika, I remember you mentioned that you took a course on the science of happiness. Tell us more about it. What, according to you, is the science of happiness?
So, obviously, I thought it was an extremely interesting subject, right? And it was being offered for free during COVID by, I think it still is, by the way, by the Yale University. And I did it online. So, it was a purely online course, which went on for about 12 weeks, I want to say, by a researcher who spent the last 30 years studying the science of happiness at the Yale University. And there's a lot of research that has gone into it. And she started it by talking about what is called the G.I. Joe fallacy, which is that just because you know something does not necessarily mean that you're doing it exactly the way it's meant to be. So, for example, the first question she felt that she would be asked, which she spoke about, was that just because I'm teaching this program, don't expect me to be the happiest person out there, because that's what the G.I. Joe fallacy is. Like, I love studying about it and I love understanding it, but that does not necessarily mean that, that I'm going to be the happiest person. Like, that's an unrealistic expectation.
And applying the same thing are two very different things. I think you can talk about something, know everything about something, but when it comes to applying it, it's a whole different ball game.
It's a whole different ball game, right? So it started with that, and I pursued that entire course, and it never felt like study because it was just so juicy and so interesting, and obviously very research heavy, which is what kind of made me kind of give credibility to it, because otherwise you have just about anybody talking on Instagram these days about, like, the gyan of it all. But when it kind of comes with the science of it, I just feel like I would trust it a lot more.
Yeah.
So yes, super interesting. But I would love to, and that is what I would be drawing from for this podcast. But I would love to know how you think about this subject.
I think happiness in itself is slightly nuanced and complex, and a lot of people have different definitions of it. I think a lot of people mistake happiness for a feeling, but I think happiness is not a feeling. It's more than a feeling. I think a feeling is something that happens over a shorter period of time. Pleasure is a feeling. Fear is a feeling. Anxiety is a feeling. Happiness is something that is stretched over a period of time. So it's a mix of feelings and decisions and choices and state of minds, I would say. Which is why overall it's a science, right? Because it's all of these different factors control your happiness. Part of it is choice, part of it is the decisions you make, part of it is, the feelings that those choices and decisions result in. But I think more or less happiness often comes down to a choice too. And it ends up being whether you're doing the things that will lead you to certain feelings, right? And those certain feelings often are of enjoyment, satisfaction, and probably a bit of pleasure. So while researching for this podcast, I stumbled upon this YouTube video on the science of happiness by Dr. Arthur Brooks, who teaches a course on the science of happiness at Harvard University. And he talks about these 4 fundamental pillars of happiness, which is faith, family, work, and friends. And I think that gave me so much perspective, because you need these elements in order to be happy. Faith is something that's bigger than you. a moment where you feel smaller and the universe feels bigger, so that it gives you perspective. So it could be meditation, it could be just, religion, it could be anything that makes you feel slightly smaller. So you can experience the wonder of this creation. Family, because I think ultimately we all need a place to belong to, have a few set of people who will be there for us, no questions asked. Friends, again, I think in the family bucket, but people who will love us, like us, even though we do nothing for them. In a way, friendship really doesn't serve any purpose of worldly transaction. It's just people who are there for you because they like you. You don't do anything for
Very
them.
unconditional.
It's unconditional.
Yeah.
Friends. And then the final is work. And work primarily that gives you purpose, that gives you a sense of identity, and that mainly kind of gives you the ability to serve the world in some way and feel like you've earned what you've earned. So the feeling of earning and the feeling of serving is what gives us satisfaction, which is a core feeling of happiness, because pleasure is often very animalistic. Pleasure usually leads to addiction, if you get caught in the cycle of pleasure. So that's more animalistic in nature. As you evolve up the evolutionary ladder, you want satisfaction. And the funny bit of satisfaction is that it involves a little bit of suffering. And here's where it gets interesting, because human beings, as the most evolved species in this creation, they love to suffer. And contrary to what we think, suffering is baked into the experience of happiness, because until and unless we do not strive for something and achieve it by means of some level of hardship, we don't feel like we deserve that thing, and it doesn't give us the feeling of satisfaction. We don't think that it was worthy enough or it was valuable enough for us to have it.
Yeah.
So that satisfaction in achieving something is what gives us happiness, and that leads to a bit of suffering. So
It's the journey of the hero.
yeah. So the most controversial opinion here is that in order to be happy, you need to suffer a little bit. And people who often run away from suffering, run away from discomfort, are usually the most unhappiest people. Those are people who get tangled in cycles of addiction and abuse and stuff like that, because they're not willing to experience temporary discomfort of working or doing the right thing or making a relationship work or giving up the pleasure in order for long-term happiness. So yeah, I think you have to suffer a little.
Long-term happiness is a really interesting phrase because, as you mentioned, like everything is a feeling and it can pass and it'll come and go. There's actually this principle called the hedonic adaptation. It's called hedonic adaptation, or it's even referred to as the hedonic treadmill, which basically means that it's the tendency of humans to kind of come back to a baseline level of happiness despite a big change. So it could be a really big change or it could be a really bad change, but your emotions will regulate themselves back to a baseline level of happiness regardless. So even if you win the lottery, you will most likely experience immense joy, but then you will adapt to that idea of you having won the lottery and you will return to your baseline level of joy. Similarly, if you have experienced tremendous loss, you will kind of experience probably immense grief for a while, but then you will return to your baseline level of joy. So, it's the mind's kind of ability or the inability to really basically change that baseline, and that baseline is where like our sense of or our overall sense of happiness really lies, right? So the entire course that I actually studied was kind of about like what affects that baseline level of joy.
Interesting.
And one thing that affects it terribly is social media. Like there was so much research done into how social media consumption is one of the worst things that you can do to yourself for that baseline level of joy. So basically, the human mind was never really wired to process this level of emotional volatility in that duration of a time. So, for example, most of us go to sleep doom scrolling through reels, right? And the fact is, I know, I mean, this is probably my experience, probably everybody's experience, I don't know. But when I'm going through all those reels, I'm going from immense awe at like cat videos, to immense sadness at like sad quotes, or to immense like joy when I see like old couples dance, or like, you know, things like that, to the range of emotions that you experience in a short,
Wild.
it's wild. Your mind is not wired to do that, and that kind of throws your internal algorithm so off that you're fatigued through the day because of that kind of emotional journey, that emotional roller coaster that you're going on. So I think that was number one. Social media consumption is terrible, and I mean, I remember that researcher actually saying that, of course, that is, you know, internet is important. Social media also has its pros, but the fact is that the cons far outweigh those pros. And her suggestion was to kind of completely go off the grid. Like, that is your best bet at happiness in this day and age. Easier said than done, of course. Like, look at us. We both know that, you know, to further our books and to further kind of reaching out to a larger audience of readers, social media plays such a big role. I mean, it's almost critical at this point. But I know inherently that that is the worst thing that I can do for myself. If I'm just looking at my sense of happiness, at some point, I definitely hope to go off the grid, maybe a few years down the line. But I know it's something that I'm going to do at some point. So,
Yeah.
so that's definitely one. And two was, she was talking about, because of this hedonic treadmill phenomenon, the idea was to spend on or invest on experiences rather than things, because they won't last long enough to disappoint you. That's what she said. Because everything that you have, you're eventually going to return to your baseline level of joy anyway. So you're eventually going to get disappointed that, oh, this did not really take me from A to B. You know, I expected to become a happier person because I got more money, or I got more fame, or I got more, I got a bigger house, I got a bigger car, I got the right partner. But eventually you will always revert to your baseline. And when you do revert to your baseline, will always be a disappointing feature, because you'll be like, oh wow, like nothing really changed internally. So therefore, you'd rather invest on experiences. They won't, you know, live long enough to kind of make you experience that disappointment. So that was one. But obviously, the final point I think from that course was that the biggest thing that you can, that your happiness depends on, is really your sense of connection.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Friends and family.
it could actually be anything. I mean, what that research said was that when people talk about like relationships or connection, they often confuse it with like a romantic partner, you know. But that's really not it. Like, it could even be somebody who has a bad marriage or is sticking out with like a really unhappy marriage, something which has been a liability, is far worse than somebody who makes it a point to spend time with their pet that they love, or even the barista at their local coffee shop. You know, it's just that sense of authentic, genuine connection every single day. Even when it gets tough to do it, like putting on the good clothes, going out there, just meeting somebody, having a conversation, calling up a friend, you know, like a close friend who may be far away. Like, these things actually are the biggest determinants of people who are
Happy.
creating that lasting sense of happiness.
Very interesting. And two things that you mentioned here, I think that spark some thoughts in me, are the whole baseline level of happiness and joy that humans are wired to, and a lot of it has evolutionary evidence that, you know, we're not wired to be happy. Happiness is not a survival skill. Human beings never had to be happy in order to survive, and
Yeah.
the goal of evolution is survival of the fittest. But you know, this plays out in such funny self-sabotaging ways, where we sabotage our own happiness because we're not just used to the level of happiness that we can have now in this generation. Which is why I think for a lot of people, when they get into a new relationship, or they get the job that they wanted, or the house that they wanted, or, you know, all of these big things that they thought would make them happy, it baffles them to realize that none of it is making them happy.
Yeah.
And that is because their baseline of
Yeah.
happiness is so little, and they
Yeah.
don't know how to change that.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it feels very confusing to their emotional body when they're suddenly experiencing a lot of happiness and they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to work with it. They don't know how to manage that happiness, and that is when they start to self-sabotage that
Yeah.
stuff, and you lose the relationship, you lose the job, your
Yeah.
house doesn't make you happy, or, you know, some random things keep happening, and, you know, whatever it is that you thought would give you happiness also gets taken away,
Yeah.
and you're rather at a lower baseline of happiness. And here's where if we bring in a little bit of woo woo stuff, if we bring a little bit of manifestation stuff to this, I think here's where container work is needed. And container work in manifestation is essentially expanding your container for more happiness, more joy, more pleasure, more beauty, more warmth. And I think that's such a life changing thing to do, because I think we all feel that, we don't know how to respond in certain situations while where we're given what we want,
Yeah.
where we get the best relationship in the world and we don't know how to respond to that kind of love, or we get the best recognition at work and we don't know how to respond to that. One of the most simplest ways in which it plays out is how most women in our country don't know how to take a compliment. We don't know how to respond when someone says
Yeah.
we're beautiful or we're looking great. We're like, okay, we're just so awkward. And that is because our containers are not expansive enough to handle praise and respect and admiration. So a lot of manifestation coaches also teach container work, which is like a mix of course, a lot of manifestation principles, of affirmations and self-concept work and other things, when you kind of see yourself as a person who has these things, who is happier. And from a scientific lens, this is essentially increasing your frequency, right?
Yeah.
Every emotion has a frequency. Anger, sorrow, these kind of emotions have a lower frequency versus happiness, joy, pleasure have higher frequency. Love is the highest frequency. So you tune your frequency to a higher bandwidth.
Yeah.
And that's what's, I think, really needed from a more energetic, spiritual lens in order to create lasting happiness.
Yeah, I mean, but I also feel like now with social media, again, coming back to one of the yet another evil from social media, I feel like there is this added pressure to be happy at all times. Like, if you're not happy, there's something wrong. And that kind of again plays into what is now being known as toxic positivity, right? Like, while happiness is definitely something very nice to have, but it's not a realistic expectation to feel happy every moment of the day. And just because you're not feeling that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong or something's wrong in your life. Or, I feel like that idea is getting dangerously ingrained in our generation, also, for sure. Because you're seeing like highlight reels of everybody online, and that is not even a small percentage of somebody's whole life.
Correct.
So I feel like that is also a dangerous kind of implication.
Yeah, and I think social media has set the standards so high, and it's also fake because you're literally comparing someone's 30-second reel to your 30-hour day.
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to be apples to oranges comparison, and you
Yeah.
can never win that battle.
Yeah.
And apart from social media, I genuinely feel like the modern world is designed to make us unhappy. The way the world demands instant responses, the overload of information, the choice paradox, I think it's just designed in a way where it's not meant to keep us happy, but it's meant to keep us slightly anxious, on the edge, always analyzing our choices, our feelings, and worrying about the next best thing or the next best decision or the next best thing that can make us happy. And that's never how happiness works, right? I think as long as you're constantly in the lack mindset of needing something to make you happy, you're never going to be happy, because you'll constantly wait on the next Charlotte Tilbury lipstick or the next match on the dating app or the next life altering promotion or opportunity to change your career
Yeah.
and give you the bigger paycheck and a fatter paycheck and a bigger house. I think it's just like a game where you keep changing the goalpost. You
Yeah.
reach a certain point and then you push the goalpost further. Then you
Yeah.
reach a certain point and you push the goalpost further, but your baseline happiness stays the same.
Yeah.
You just keep pushing the goalpost,
Yeah.
and that's a losing game.
That's a losing game.
I mean, you're never gonna win.
Yeah.
And I think there's a point in, I think, one's life where you realize that this is just so self-sabotaging and
Yeah.
this is just so, I mean, it's not benefiting you in the
Yeah.
long run. When it comes to happiness, at
Yeah.
least, it's not benefiting you. It may benefit you from a lens of pleasure, it may benefit you from a lens of worldly recognition and achievement, but what is all of that giving you in the end? Is it giving you happiness? No. It may be giving you like a temporary sense of accomplishment, which again drives and feeds your ego and does not really feed the soul. And I think most of unhappiness comes when you're just trying to feed the ego and you're not trying to feed the soul. So I think that's somewhere most of us go wrong. But yeah, I mean, not to say that you become a hermit and you stop moving the goalpost and just stay happy in like smaller things. I think it's not to take away from the fact that lose ambition. But I think balance is something that most of us forget about in this quest for happiness.
Yeah, but don't you think that this entire, like the culture that we are in, I don't think it's about happiness is always going to be something that you have to find where you are. I mean, you know, as you rightly mentioned, you can keep arriving where you thought you need to arrive, and you will still keep pushing the goalpost further because of that hedonic
This is also not enough.
treadmill.
This is also not enough. And
because
nothing's ever going to be
because
enough.
you're like, oh wow, I've experienced this immense high, and now I want more of this feeling. But you will go back to your baseline of joy, and then you'll be like, oh, but I need to feel that feeling again. It's almost like an addiction where you start chasing happiness like a drug, and you keep kind of hustling towards like an uncertain
which
future.
is why I think it's not chasing happiness. What we're chasing in this process is just certain
it's that adrenaline high, honestly.
high,
you know, it's that adrenaline high. But having said that, I also feel that often, like with the book, for example, you know, it was a childhood dream of mine that I mean, I used to kind of hope that someday I'll have a book with my name on a bookshelf, you know, in crosswords and things like that. And when it finally happened, I just remember running and like, okay, what's next? How do I push this? How do I push this? How do I push this? Like, I didn't take a moment to just absorb that, hey, something great happened. Like, you know, just take a moment to be happy.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because that has been my exact experience, Niharika. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding here, because and I was so much so to the point that I was unhappy that why am I not happy enough?
Yeah, because I'm like, why am I not happy enough? This is such a big thing that's happened, and whatever happens after this has happened.
Yeah.
And like, where is my moment of happiness from that?
It's a huge milestone. You know it, you've dreamt about it, but when it happens, but you know, here's the funny bit. This is also the process of manifestation. The manifestation principle teaches you that when you arrive at your desire, when you de-pedestalize it. And de-pedestalizing that desire means that, you know, you don't put it on that pedestal, so it doesn't give you that feeling of...
Actually, that's why you also get it, right?
That is why you get it, because now you don't attach your sense of accomplishment, sense of happiness, sense of all of these things to that thing. Now you've detached from it, and that is why it happened.
You received it.
That's
because the cost of receiving your gift.
Yeah, the cost of receiving your gift is this, and you have to detach from it. And since you've detached from it, I'm sorry, you're not going to feel happiness. So I don't know.
Gosh.
It's actually crazy.
Yeah, creepy, goosebumpy.
It's slightly, but and I've been thinking about it, honestly. This is not like a revelation that's happened to me within this podcast. This is something I've been thinking about, and I've honestly also been thinking about what is the hack to experience the greater levels of happiness while receiving the desires that you want to experience. And I think the answer is container expansion and gratitude. Ultimately, reminding yourself.
Yeah, which also reminds me, do you remember all of last year dreaming about us having our own podcast and just enjoying a day sitting by our own neon sign and kind of just talking all day long about things that we love. And we're getting to do that. We're getting to live out our dream. And for the most part, we kind of are not really absorbing the fact that, hey, it's real.
It's real.
Like, we've got to celebrate that.
Exactly. Yeah. We must.
Yes. But meanwhile, we'll throw it up to the listeners.
Correct.
And to the viewers. And we'd love to know what you think about the science of happiness, and if you know about any research specifically that pertains to kind of just the science of happiness.
Yes. And until then, this is Simran.
And I'm Niharika.
And we're signing off from the Girls Who Think, the podcast.